Welcome to week 7 of GLIAC Weekly. I am Matt Witwicky. I'm joined by my expert, Tony Nicolette. Tony, how are you doing tonight?
I'm Jim Dandy, Whit. Good to be on the show with you, man. Ready to rock.
Every time I see that intro, it makes me tape up my ankles just a little bit tighter, Tony. Feel
Okay,
like I
well,
gotta get ready to get out there or something.
yeah,
But
we don't need any wobbling, Whit. So
no,
tape 'em up good.
or the pain that goes with it afterwards. But um, well, let's go ahead and pull up our slate for this last weekend, Tony. You and I had mentioned that we may be a little bit at risk for some one-sided contests heading into the week. At
Yeah,
least Mr. Massey thought so. And the tightest game was the tightest game.
it was.
Uh,
It was.
Now, about to say before we jump all the way in, that was like when I flipped on my TV, Tony. That was like one of the first games I think of the day, if I'm not mistaken.
That was a nooner. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me that was like 11 a.m. or something my time or whatever it was, and I'm watching that, and great game back and forth. It was pretty much the game we thought it would be. I think almost to a T, where Davenport was just able to outlast them, and we're going to go ahead and kind of pop on in, take a little bit more look behind the scenes here. We've got some of the numbers. We're going to return to that here in a minute. But Tony, I'm going to run a little bit of the Davenport video, and we'll go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about this. As we go ahead and we start on off, and we had talked about the passing game
Yep.
for Michigan Tech, and it didn't take very long for them to get going and get on the board, Tony, and all of a sudden this game was kind of off and running.
Yeah, it was. The Freeze hits the deep shot to Champion there, and then Roof gets the touchdown here, which was really the only, I hate to say it, the only good running play that Tech really had all day.
Right.
And then you say off and run, and you weren't kidding, because Antoine Collins comes right back over the top here on the ensuing kick and knocks the game at 7 in the first quarter. And you almost think, geez, oh, Pete, is this going to be a little bit more of a track meet than we were expecting? But,
Yeah.
it ended up being, Darius Willis getting a touchdown here. It ended up being kind of a lot of what we thought, right? The physicality of these two teams up front was really on display. We really felt like the team that could run the ball more effectively would have the advantage. Statistically, that was Davenport, although their buck and change that they put together on the ground wasn't exactly overwhelming. I think it was just their ability to be consistent and keep drives alive. And then the big plays here. This is Antoine Collins ripping on a crosser here.
Yeah, just a little bit of speed right there, huh?
You got it. And those two lightning strikes kind of ended up being a big chunk of the difference in this game, because Tech did have a couple of deep shot gains and whatnot, but it just seemed like they felt like at a couple different points that they were starting to gain control of things, and then those Collins plays hit and knotted the game up. And then as the third and fourth quarter wore on, you just saw Davenport's physicality kind of win out.
Yeah, and this ends up being the last score of the contest right there, putting it 24-20.
Yep.
And as I was kind of taking some of that game in, I was impressed with Michigan Tech's ability to get chunk plays down the field in the passing game the way they were, especially against a quality defense like Davenport. But we both kind of figured that Davenport's physicality and ability to run it was probably going to end up being the difference in this one. And that's a little bit of what we saw. And in the overall scheme of things, I think a really solid effort for Michigan Tech, and a team that we think is going to be a tough squad against any of what we consider to probably be those top 4 as they're trying to break on in. But Davenport's played an interesting schedule, and they were able to go ahead and notch another win here.
Yeah, all 4 of their victories have been on the road. And all 4 of those road trips, I think, were 8+ hours too. So I mean, they've been warriors, man. No joke. No joke over there in Sparky Land. So
yeah, no thanks on those road trips. But well, then we have Saginaw Valley going and playing at Roosevelt, basically making the trip to the Chicagoland area at Arlington Heights, Illinois.
Yeah,
and we've also got some video for that. We always joke around, this isn't Sports Center, but we might have some video for you. Let's go ahead and kind of take a peek at some of the action here. And as you and I are watching, we talked a little bit last week about Mason McKenzie being able to make plays with his feet. And man, you see some of that right away in this game, and then they're able to go ahead and hit a score downfield just like this.
Yep.
And Tony, this is kind of I think that this is a very good defensive team. That if they can continue to show these kind of flashes offensively, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And that's a great rollout there, the athleticism, being able to hit that throw on the run like that is just a heck of a job. And then you go ahead and see, well, Terrence Brown, we know about him, and Roosevelt found out about him with the way that he can go ahead and make plays like that.
A little bit.
But then they strike back here, Tony. Roosevelt does.
Yeah, Keontae Nixon's a playmaker, man. I mean, in all 5 of their games, he's been pretty much their leading receiver. And if they've had shot plays or chunk plays, he's usually been on the receiving end of them. I think for me, the 2 things that I noticed in this game that I was really looking for were, number one, with Roosevelt, we've talked about how they seem like they play hard every week, and they definitely did in this game as well. The one thing that I was looking for from Saginaw Valley that I got, even though it didn't probably translate into as many points as they would have liked, was they were much more consistent in how they moved the ball. If you looked at some of their wins early in the season, a lot of it had to do with big plays and short fields. They were actually moving the ball really well in this game, and maybe just had some drive stall in Roosevelt territory. So as much as they didn't finish drives, I mean, they were over 500 yards of total offense in this game. So they were much more consistent in having sustained drives. And that's the type of thing that you got to do week in and week out. Those will turn into points as you keep working through the season.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about McKenzie continuing to be a strong performer for them, and I can't think of anybody better to help us review some of this action than fifth season coach Ryan Brady is going to go ahead and join us. Coach, we just got done breaking down your team a little bit, just based on the highlights. You had a chance to watch the video, obviously, break it down quite a bit. Tell us a little bit of what you guys took after having a chance to soak in the film.
Yeah, Tony's exactly right. Roosevelt, they play hard, and I was really impressed. I thought they played really well. They were disciplined, and I know their coach had a medical emergency during the Ferris game, and so they had to rally around their defensive coordinator, and I thought they did a great job. And Nixon is a good receiver. I mean, we had our plans to try to contain him, and we thought we did a decent job, but he got us once really good and made a huge play, and they hung around. But yeah, we felt good about the way we were moving the ball. We had some penalties in the second half that stalled some drives, kind of like Tony mentioned. So that was frustrating from our offensive production standpoint in terms of the points on the board. But overall it was another really good road win, and Roosevelt's going to be a really nice addition to the GLIAC.
Well, Coach, as we go ahead, if I took a look, for example, at some of your guys' skill positions, we talked about Mason McKenzie briefly there, but a weapon that second in rushing in the league, Terrence Brown. Tell us a little bit about how he's able to help your offense, and kind of a little bit more about kind of what makes that offense tick.
Yeah, Terrence is a multi-dimensional athlete, so he's a really good receiver out of the backfield. We could split him out. We could put him really anywhere on offense, and he would be dominant. I mean, he's a special athlete, but he's got great vision, and he's just got really good ball skills, and man, he can go. And so we're excited to see him getting going. He's really been picking up steam the last few weeks here, and so. Proud of him for that. And but we've got a solid offensive line. We've got a lot of guys that have played a lot of football that have returned, and a solid group of tight ends. So we feel like we can be dominant up front. But then you mentioned Mason McKenzie, and he's electric with his arms and his legs. There's times that he doesn't look like a redshirt freshman out there. And we've got some good young dynamic receivers that are just redshirt freshmen. You saw Joe Walker went 7 for 117. He's a transfer from Eastern Michigan, and he's 6'4", 200 pounds, and he can run like a gazelle. So he's going to be a good one for us. And Zarek Zielinski's been banged up, but you saw flashes from him early in the season as well. And Eric Kraft has really come on.
Yeah,
he's the junior for us, and so we feel good about our group and the character of our group. And we've been through some battles, and we've won some games, but we've got a lot of work to do. And so our model this year has kind of been we want to go from good to great, and so that's what we're working towards.
So, Coach, you talked a little bit about how excited you are about Mason McKenzie, and obviously we all know as offense becomes so much more prominent in football these days versus when we were all kids and guys throwing 20 times a game was like, my God, were they behind? It was just it was a much different ball game back then. But I'm a guy who lives on the west side of the state, so I got to see Mason McKenzie play in high school, and I know how heavily recruited he was. Talk about that process of attracting him to your program and how much he's matured in that year and change that he's been with you guys, and how he won the job, and what maturation you're seeing from him.
Yeah, it was quite a recruiting battle, to say the least, is to get him out of West Michigan. So, but me and Mason, we hit it off. I mean, we're very alike. Me and him, we have these crazy ping pong battles, and like we go at it right in our player lounge all the time. And so, but he's a great golfer. He's good at everything that he does, and he's just super competitive, and he's just got that confidence and that swag about him. And that's what makes him special. And he's obviously matured really quick. And so quarterback's a tough position to play at the college level. And, obviously he got to start, against Davenport last year in his backyard in a big game and played well. I mean, like in week 7 or week 8 or something.
Yep.
And so we knew right then what we had with him. And so we made sure we contained his red shirt. And, I'm excited because, as you mentioned, I'm going into my 5th season here, and this is the first, high school guy that we've had. And so we've had some different quarterbacks and some transfers, and, I'd like to have a guy here for the next 3 or 4 years, and, and just really get this thing rolling. And so we did a good job recruiting. Mason's been a big part of our recruiting efforts. He's always helping us and reaching out and, coach, who do we need to get? And so he's all in, which makes it exciting. And he's just got the total confidence from the team. I mean, our team believes, like, when he steps on the field, that he is the most dynamic and electric player on the field on that given day. And so that just really gives our team a lot of confidence.
Coach, I think we're going to need to get him some longer football pants. Just thought I'd point that out.
That's the style nowadays.
That's the old guy in the room talking, I think,
that's
right
not
there.
Technically legal, but that's how all the kids wear them. So
exactly, yeah. So my knees hurt looking at that. But Coach, enough about all this offense stuff. Let's talk about the defensive side. I got Micah Kressinger, who's on our All-American team, by the way. Alfred Daly, your leading tackler. Eli Gordon's made a ton of plays for you already. For those who aren't real familiar with this defense, this defense is a top 20 defense in the country, points allowed. You guys are top 10 in sacks. Talk them up a little bit, Coach. Let's hear about them.
Yeah, we've got a great defense. I feel they've been playing really well, and the best is yet to come. And there's guys like Leonard Henry, who's been a sack machine for us at defensive end. And, then all of a sudden you saw Adam LeDuc, he's the opposite defensive end. And he just had 2.5 sacks last week against Roosevelt. And, we got guys like Brandon Rawls, which is like Micah Kressinger's twin on the other side.
Yeah.
And, I was very fortunate to, get Brandon Clayton from Northwest Missouri. Longtime Bearcat great, legend in himself. Yeah, there he is. There you go, to come on over and, bring put his flavor on this defense. And so that's turning out to be a great decision there. And he fits in really great with our staff, and our players love him. And he's been doing a phenomenal job, him and the rest of the defensive staff. And so, yeah, defensively, we feel like we've got a really, really solid group. We're a little young in the secondary, but those guys have been playing well, and we're long and we're athletic back there. Guys like Christian Ellison and DJ Volt have our two long 6'1" and some change corners that played a whole bunch as redshirt freshmen a year ago in 23. And so we knew in 23 we were going to, it was going to be a challenge, but we played a whole bunch of freshmen in the back end, and that's paying dividends this year. And so we've got a great front seven. We're really tough against the run, and we've got some guys that we feel like can run with anybody. So it's really, I think, the backbone of our team is our defense, and then you look at our offensive line and with Terrence Brown and our ability to run the ball, and we've kind of trying to put it all together here.
Coach, obviously, Brandon Clayton was something that caught a lot of our eyes, knowing that, he had been at Northwest for a long time, former player, everything there. What are some of the things that he brought over from kind of their culture and how they go about things with a school that's used to having a real good defense? What do you feel are some of the things that kind of he brought with when he arrived to your squad?
Just his discipline in the details. Brandon is a grinder, and he puts his time in, and his players know exactly how he wants them to play, and he plays the way he coaches is the way that we play. And so I love that. He's very demanding, but he's a big relationship guy. So he's got a great relationship with the kids. And so he was just really a great fit. In 2019, when I got to Saginaw, I reached out to him and said, hey, would you be interested? And, he was like, who are you? And so he's like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm at Northwest, dude, and so, 5 years later, I circled back around, and, and he said, yeah, hey, coach, I'd like to talk, and so we kind of built the relationship over the years where, I'd reach out and see how things are going, and, hey, man, tell me about, this team or that team, or how do you doing this on defense? And so we just kind of built a relationship over the years. And then, he came up and visited us, and, he was like, wow, okay. He's like, man, you guys are really close. And so I said, yeah, we feel the same, and feel like you would be the man that could maybe get us, take us to the next level here. So, Brandon's been great to work with, and, the best is yet to come with him and in this defense.
Sure.
Hey, Coach, so obviously Chesaning guy, right? You grew up about a half hour from where you're working now, and you've got a unique perspective on the GLIAC from the standpoint that you grew up in the middle of the footprint, not too far from the conference headquarters in Bay City. I think other than maybe a little bit of time at a D1 school right out of high school, you ended up playing in the GLIAC. You coached elsewhere in the GLIAC. Just talk about how fun that is to have grown up in the middle of all this and then to make your living and to build the relationships with the kids and just be able to talk about and coach from a GLIAC perspective that you've kind of lived in your whole life.
Yeah, it is. I'm blessed. It is special. I do pinch myself often that I had the opportunity and the platform to do what I'm doing. I love it at Saginaw. It's great people. But obviously I grew up like 35 minutes from here. So when I was a high schooler, I spent all my time, football camps, basketball camps at Saginaw Valley, and I was always running around the facility. And, our my high school head coach, who's a Michigan High School Hall of Famer, he was my neighbor, and he brought all these student teacher, former football players from SVSU to come coach our team. And, we were fortunate to win the state championship at Chesaning my senior year. And so I had all these great guys, like Kent Sikora and Matt Relbusky and Rob Reeves and Dan Yates. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then, there were some former Chesaning guys that were playing on Saginaw's team. And so I got to go hang out at practice in the locker room and hang out in the Writers Center. And so it was kind of neat growing up. I had that perspective, and Jerry Kill recruited me. And so, that was neat. And so I got to follow, him and what they did in the late 90s. And, and then kind of, I never thought it would be, but but then Brian Kelly came along and convinced me to come to Grand Valley, and, had a great experience there. And that was incredible, being a part of the first national championship team at Grand Valley, and, being me and my guys being a part of starting that dynasty. That was really cool. Got a lot of great friends that still reach out to me. Some of them now, their kids played for me at Saginaw, which is really cool.
Nice.
And so, and then, you fast forward, and, then I spent a long time at Ferris State with Coach Anise, and, that was just an amazing time in my life. And now I'm like full circle. I'm back in Saginaw County, and my wife and her family's from this area, and so there's lots of relatives and grandpas and grandmas still around, and so we've got a big crew coming for the game this weekend. So it's definitely really neat. And 20 plus years in the league, and it's a great league. It's always been one of the best, and that's what makes it so special. And so I'm just fortunate that I've been at 3 different schools that have all been really good, and got to be a part and learn from some of the best, and Brian Kelly and Coach Anise and my high school head coach. So I've been very, very blessed.
Fortunate indeed.
Very much so.
Coach, as we go ahead and kind of look at your slate so far, you guys are 6 games in. Obviously, what you have left is on the right side, and 5-1. Anytime we talk to a coach about this time, they're not completely satisfied with what they've done so far. There's things to improve. How would you grade yourself so far as a squad, offensively and defensively, if you were going to be, kind of introspective about this?
Yeah, we've got to continue to grow in both those areas. I mean, obviously, we're not satisfied. We're disappointed in our performance in week 2, and we've learned a lot from that. Feel like we've had a really tough slate. I mean, 5 of our first 6 are on the road, 6 of our first 7 on the road. I mean, that's crazy.
Really?
So, but we've had some quality wins. On the road at Winona State. They're a good football team. So we went out there and took care of business, and we felt good about that. And Truman State is no slouch, and that was a tough game. The score doesn't do that justice. That was a battle, and then obviously then we had to go on the road all the way to Indy and play. And their quarterback's as good as any quarterback, I think. Maybe in all of D2. Like, that kid is good. He was special. So, and their defense is lights out. So that was a tough, grinded out win. So, we feel good about, the competition that we've played, and we know we can compete with we think anybody in the country. And so we're excited, about the pieces that we have in place. We feel like we've did a really good job recruiting. We've recruited with a high school model. We do have some transfers. I mean, obviously in this day and age, you have to get into the portal a little bit, but we really focused on, when the pandemic hit, like, we're going to recruit high school kids. And so we've been recruiting high school kids and developing them, and our retention's been great. And when you do it that way, it takes time. And
For sure.
we've played, I think, one of the toughest schedules in the country. My first 4 years here, we've had gauntlets. We played Commerce, we played Bowie State, we played Indy, we played Truman, we've been to Texas A&M Kingsville. I mean, anybody that will play, we want to play, and so games are hard to come by.
Yeah.
So we'll take them any way we can get them. And so it hasn't been necessarily like the ideal situation, but in terms of our grades, I think offensively we haven't even got close to our ceiling yet, and so we've been steadily improving. Like Tony said, I'd probably grade us anywhere from the C+ to B- range in terms of my standards. We got a lot more that we can do in that regard. And then, defensively, we haven't shut out anybody yet, and we've given up some explosive plays, and those are disappointing. And so I think there's some definite areas that we can improve, on defense as well. And so, I would give us probably a B-, C+, in that range. And our greatest area of improvement is probably on special teams, and that's been a reflection of our recruiting, because we're deep. We have a lot of depth on this team. Like, we got 12 or 13 linebackers that I absolutely love. And it's the same thing with our secondary now. We've got 12, 13 guys that we can dress that can really compete on special teams. And so we're starting to really see, some of our labor in the recruiting department and some of our strength and conditioning. We do a great job with our strength and conditioning. We've got an elite strength and conditioning program, an elite coach in Fahad Jindani, who come from Vanderbilt and spent 6 years. So we've got an SEC strength coach here. And so, we feel really good about our special teams. Our special teams have probably been, more our best area in terms of, how I feel like we've grown, and I'd give us a B in that area. So we're climbing. We still got some young guys, so we still are inexperienced in some areas. But we feel good about the talent level and the culture. We have a great culture, and I have a great staff, and Saginaw's a great place, and so we feel really good about things to come.
Sure.
Awesome. All right, Coach. So the GLIAC schedule makers, being the humor-driven people that they are, you get to face a second set of Lakers for the second week in a row. When it comes to the Battle of the Valleys version of the Lakers, all right, let's we'll get you out of here on this one. Talk a little bit about what you see on tape, and how you think the kids are preparing, and what we can expect on Saturday.
Yeah, obviously a huge game this week. Battle of the Valleys. This is one of those rivalries every year that this is a huge game. And so obviously I've been on both sides of this. Grand Valley's a really good team, disciplined team, physical, great tacklers. They run the football extremely well. They've got a veteran quarterback. They're very well coached. They've got a great in the kicking game. I mean, they don't have a lot of weaknesses. And so it's a great challenge this Saturday, and one we're really excited about, an opportunity like we are excited about. And I just told the kids, I said, when I recruited you, this is what I told you. I was recruiting you to come play in games like this, that, it was going to be Saginaw Valley and Grand Valley, and, it's going to be 5-1 versus 6-0. And this is, and so, the kids are like, yeah, coach, this is what you said. And so, now it's time for us to, find a way to get a W on Saturday. And so, it's been a great week of preparation so far. It's been a physical week in practice, trying to calm the kids down and say, we got to play on Saturday, not on Tuesday. So trying to keep everybody off the ground. And so, but it's just, obviously it's this is why you train all year. It's for games like this. And so, you get all those 5:30, 6 a.m. workouts all summer long. And this is what you're thinking about when you're grinding through, winter conditioning and all the off-season training. And so, this is going to be a tough test for us. We're excited. We're at home. It's homecoming. Going to be an electric atmosphere in Harvey Wicks, and our guys are ready for their opportunity.
Well, Coach, we're looking forward to what Saturday brings. Certainly one of the top games in the country, and one that is going to get a lot of eyeballs, and looking forward for us to be able to take that on in. Really appreciate you making time.
Thanks for thinking about me. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
You know what? You're our first coach of the year. We want to make sure you knew that. So
I did not know that. Okay.
See, all the more important now.
That's
but
right.
well, hey, you have yourself a great night, and we'll look forward to your game Saturday. Thanks for stopping on by, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. You guys have a great one.
Thanks, Coach. See you Saturday.
Well, Tony, obviously we had 2 games that we've looked at so far.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and kind of continue on with some of the other contests that we had. Don't have highlights from the other ones. We got Ferris State and Wayne State. They were having so much fun, Tony. They decided to take 2 days.
That's right.
To play this game.
The old Ernie Banks adage, right?
Exactly. Yeah, something like that. Right.
Let's play 2.
Right. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Well, the funny thing is the second version of this was a little different than the first, the Sunday, because actually Wayne put some points on the board on Sunday. They didn't do that in the Saturday stint of the game. And you can see, this game was a 1-score game going at one point, and you say that, but this is kind of similar to, it's the exact same final score as the Saginaw Roosevelt game, right? When you look statistically, it really wasn't that close. Ferris was moving the ball pretty much at will and had some penalties, had a couple of miscues that, stifled some drives. They turned the ball over on downs in Wayne State territory a few times, So, it was, you could tell who the better team was and who was moving the ball most effectively. But similarly to the last game too, Wayne played hard. Coach Wheatley's record so far through a season and a half probably isn't anywhere near where he'd like it to be, but his kids play hard. And he's probably hit the portal maybe a little bit more than some of the other coaches in the league have. But if he can keep any of those kids around and have some consistency, they'll get there. And Champ Edwards is a dynamic athlete. he was making a ton of plays. Obviously, not to the same extent that Trinidad Chambliss was for Ferris. But let's face it, Trinidad's got a little bit more around him at this point than Champ does. So, this was another game where for as much as Wayne's a winless team, and you're going to hear that thematically from me. I mean, I've seen all these teams that haven't won a game in the GLIAC yet, and they all play hard. They all play hard every week.
Well, it's funny on Sunday. I'm doing stuff getting ready for our Sunday evening show, and all of a sudden I kind of flip across and I see it's 17-14.
Yeah,
third quarter, Ferris State. I was like, wait a second, what? Because I knew it was 17-0 at half.
right.
And my first thought is, okay, Ferris has now got to try and get up for playing a second half as they're up 17-0. And the weather had been a deal and all that other stuff. And, it's just, it's one of those games where it just kind of felt like Ferris State just needed this game to be over.
Yeah. And I think we had a couple of those games in the GLIAC this weekend too. The weather was not real. All the time I've spent talking about how great the weather's been in Michigan.
Yeah, you cursed that. That's pretty apparent.
This past Saturday was no bueno.
Well, and so this game,
yeah,
I happen to be flipping around the dial. Yeah, I'm flipping around the dial, and Coach Wooster, it comes out after half, and it is like raining sheets. And I'm just like, all I could think was, the selfish side of me was thinking, any game I've been at like that, I really don't want to be there. And, and I just thought to myself, they have got to gut this out for the next, next hour, essentially, in real time. And I was just thinking, oh, man, and they were up 28-3 at half and everything else. But kind of what was your take on this?
Well, the funny thing is, too, is if I heard correctly, they actually got rid of the media timeouts from this game. So they did everything they could to condense the total time elapsed window. And I want to say it was in the 2.5 hour range, which for a Grand Valley game is actually pretty quick. So
right.
Or at least a home game anyway. But yeah, I mean, this was a game of, you look at Grand Valley's passing stats in this game, and I think they only had 92 yards as a team, and you think, well, okay, it's not that great, and it's you normally we would talk about that, right? Because it's like, even in the rain,
right,
you'd think, man, they were that unbalanced. They didn't move the ball, and then you look over on the other side, and that's not a typo, folks. Aiden Horton was 0 of 5 for 0 yards, and Northern did not complete a pass in this game. And now I get that they're running that split back veer these days, and so they aren't as pass heavy anyway. But
when you're down big, right?
When you're down big and you just you're committed to it, I think there was a certain amount of, okay, let's try and get as good at this as we can, against a good defense, and they just tried to get as much out of it as they could, and they did put up a few points. They actually slipped a couple of dive plays past the Lakers too that netted some yards and some touchdowns and whatnot. So again, Northern played hard for as much as they were pretty much behind from the jump, literally, because Kellen Reed had a kickoff return for touchdown on the opening kick. And then on the ensuing kick, Northern fumbled, giving Grand Valley a short field, and they scored 3 plays later. So it was 14-0, not even 2 minutes into the game.
Right. Well, they covered the spread. I'll give them that, because the spread was a 40, I think, or something like that. But when you see that kind of conditions and everything else, let's be really honest.
Oh yeah,
the team who's rolling is just trying to get this game over with, and the team on the other side's not thrilled about being out there and all of it either.
Probably not.
It kind of is what it is. But well, let's go ahead and see who was rewarded for their top performances. Talk us through this, if you would, buddy.
Yeah, sure. So we just talked about Kellen Reed ripping the kickoff return touchdown to start the game. And what's funny is, normally that in a normal week is going to get you player of the week. And yet then I think Saginaw Valley had one, Davenport had one. So it's like,
right.
Everybody in the GLIAC office probably going, all right, which, how do we flip a 3-sided coin to figure out which one's going to get this? Actually, Reed did return a second one for a touchdown in the second half. They got called back on a penalty too. So I don't know if that was
the tipping point.
That was the tipping point, but hey, he's had 3 of these in his short career at Grand Valley. So he's definitely an explosive guy back there, and a lot of teams might try and kick away from him at some point. We've already talked about Trinidad Chambliss. He had a good week. throwing the ball. But the rushing statistics were the big number for him, because I think he had the biggest rushing number of any player in the league this week.
Yeah, went over 100 in the whole deal, right?
48 and a score, yeah. And he ripped a couple, and he got tackled inside the 5, I think, more than once, where he could have had a couple more scores. So he was definitely looked fast and electric. And there were some times where he was running in some really wide open spaces. So Ferris's, offensive line was doing a good job. Their scheme was doing a good job. And for as much as he was running past guys wearing the green and gold of Wayne State, Carl Ware for the Warriors still made a bunch of plays and got the nod for Defensive Player of the Week. He forced a fumble, had an interception, got a pass breakup, led the team in tackles. So I mean, he had a busy day and put up a good game. And again, Wayne fought hard in this game and had it down to a score in the third quarter. So, I mean, and he was a big part of why that game was still a game, even though, statistically it looked like Ferris was running away with it.
Well, let's go ahead and as we kind of finish talking up about last week's game, let's go ahead and see what we have for this week. I think a little more intriguing slate than what we had maybe a week ago. And we start off with the two heavy hitters in the league. No, the two teams who are looking to see who's going to scratch their first win. Let's go ahead and take a look. Roosevelt and Northern Michigan. This is a tale of the tape trying to figure out which one is doing things in a positive enough manner where you're ready to lean on them. And both of these schools are going to go ahead and have some level of prosperity this year. It just hasn't happened yet.
Correct.
Tony, I got to be honest with you. I'm leaning towards Roosevelt. I think that they so far have, both these teams are winless. Roosevelt stuck around in games a whole lot better, in my opinion, than Northern Michigan has. So
on a week in, week out basis, I would agree with you.
And if that's what I'm using to favor this, so be it. I like their passing offense more than I like anything right now on Northern Michigan. So that's why I'm going to lean that way myself. Which direction are you looking to go?
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with you in that regard, Whit. And I think the other part too is that even though they're giving up 32 points a game defensively, they've still, to your point, held most people down pretty well. And part of what's skewing that is the 55 spot that they gave up to Ferris. I mean, other than that, they've really held people down halfway decent and stayed in games. I think the only intangible here, which is going to sound funny to say, but making that trip up to Northern in a traditional sense, at least back to when I think back to it, back 10, 15 years ago, going up to Northern was a tough road trip. And there were a lot of teams that were, had chances to go 7-4, maybe creep their way up to 8-3, start sniffing around the edge of the playoffs, and they'd go up to Northern and get beat. And Northern might have only been a 3 or 4 win team that year, but just playing in that dome and making that trip, there was just always something about it. So for Roosevelt to have to go up there for the first time, it's going to be a unique experience. I got my fill of the Superior Dome the other day on Big Ten Network watching the Wildcats play Michigan State in a preseason exhibition basketball game where they retired Izzo's number up there. He was an All-American guard for the Wildcat basketball team.
Sure.
So I was looking at the Superior Dome just a couple of days ago on TV. But I think statistically, and I think if you like Coach Brady was talking about how hard Roosevelt played and how really solid they were and disciplined they were defensively, they're going to have to be to handle the veer as Northern Michigan's continuing to employ it, and as that continues to get a little bit more in sync for the Wildcats. I still think Roosevelt's, especially if Keontae Nixon breaks a play or two in this one, I think I think this is a good spot for them to get a win. But yeah, that dome is still just a funny place to play. So there's not a surprise in this one that would really, or a result that would really surprise me.
I was kind of more intrigued, Tony, about what direction are they taking to go there? Are they going the Michigan way? They going the Wisconsin way? And apparently, per Google, they would go up through Green Bay in that direction. Yeah, the Wisconsin way.
All day.
And I was trying to picture that in my head. And
yeah, no, that's the route for like Wisconsin Parkside and Purdue Northwest and those teams going to the UP or vice versa. That's a through Wisconsin trip. It actually shaves a lot versus
they literally go right through Green Bay
all the way across the UP and then down. Yeah.
I mean, you're literally right through Green Bay. So that's the travels of the GLIAC, very interesting, kind of like back in where I'm at in the Northern Sun. There's a lot of interesting scenarios there, but
there are some jaunts.
mine not to Upper Iowa kind of stuff, but no.
Right.
Let's go ahead and take a look at Michigan Tech. We talked a little bit about them earlier, and they've shown us quite a bit of a fight and quite a bit in their passing game. Gonna go ahead and battle Ferris State. So Ferris State, obviously a fairly heavy favorite here, but at the same time, I'm interested to see if Michigan Tech is able to get some plays off down the field on Ferris State, or if Ferris State's just going to be too quick to the quarterback and limit them, because Ferris State's quick to the football on defense no matter where it's going.
Yeah.
My bigger concern is probably the other side, where I think the Ferris State offense gets going. Which way do you kind of see this, and what are some of the things you're looking for?
So obviously, despite the 4-2 record, this is Ferris State is the favorite here. I don't think there's any real question about that. I think for me, what I watch is, look, Tech continues, especially against any sort of physically dominant or physically capable defensive fronts. They struggle to run the football, and that lack of balance and that, it just makes it that much easier for Ferris to kind of pin their ears back and know what they need to do to slow down Alex Freeze and his trio of receivers. Now, Tech is capable of, and they did some of that against Davenport last week, where they would move the pocket a little bit. The problem is if your guy doesn't flash right away, then it's a situation of where Freeze has either got to pull it down and take a hit, or he's got to throw the ball away, and you just end up with kind of a lost down. So I think, to me, that's the concern for Tech here is, can they generate enough offense and enough points to keep up? Because Ferris is going to score the ball. Now, with that said, I think one thing to watch in this game is this is going to be one of the better defenses that Ferris has seen since probably week one.
Yeah, they've been fairly untested. Yeah,
correct. So Tech's ability to play assignment ball and slow some things down is going to be key. And it just seems like Tech always plays Ferris tough. They don't ever seem to beat him, but they always seem to play him tough. And sometimes that's just because, Ferris will have a game where maybe they put the ball on the deck 3 or 4 times, and Tech finds a way to get on a couple. Or Tech makes a perfect read on one of the route combinations and steps in front of a pass that, a less well-prepared defense isn't going to be able to know to be positioned correctly to do that. And so it's that type of intellectual aspect to Tech and the way they play defense. That level of preparedness, I think, at times they've given themselves some chances to hang in games against Ferris, even though they've been outmanned, just because, again, their attention to that detail has been better than some of the other teams that Ferris faces, and so it helps Tech. I think at the end of the day, this is still Ferris's game. Just for, all the reasons that we would normally think. But I like Tech to keep this one interesting for at least a while.
I feel like we know who Tech is.
Yeah.
Ferris State, I don't know if we know exactly who they are. And I say this because I saw them get absolutely skunked at Pitt State, where their offense had 1 first down in the first half.
Yeah.
And Trinidad Chambliss didn't look like the guy then. Since then, he's looked like the guy. And so now I'm kind of interested to see when they start playing better competition, and clearly Michigan Tech is better competition than what they've been seeing. I want to see how he does and how he does in tests like this, because I think this is one of those games where, how good is Ferris right now? Do they eke out of this game, or do they look more like the Ferris who would probably find a way to make this a one-sided game by the time we're done with 3 quarters?
Yeah.
So I'm real interested to see that aspect of it, because I'm not real sure which direction it goes just yet. When you take a look at a lot of their skill players, and we've talked about this, they still kind of feel young and inexperienced compared to what they've had over the last few years. So I'm very interested to see how good a ball game this is. I do, like you, expect Michigan Tech, but I think by the time we look at the score at half, I think they are within striking distance at half. I just don't know if that stays around come the second half.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to draft up what I think would happen, it's going to be, 20-14 at the half, but then it's probably 44-20 by the time the game's over.
Yeah,
That's just how these matchups seem to tend to go. And the funny thing is about Chambliss is, I mean, if you really watch it, I think there's a maturation you're starting to see. And
right.
for as unfortunate as Gulker's injury was, Trinidad's getting all the first team reps now, and he starts the game as the guy. They're not putting anybody else in there. So with all this additional experience he's gaining, all these extra reps he's gaining, I'm wondering if he's not coming along and developing into what Coach Anise was hoping for out of him, maybe on a little bit quicker timetable than maybe what they were originally planning for him.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah.
No doubt. The next game up, Wayne State at Davenport. Now, my first thought when I see this game is that Wayne State I don't feel like they're an 0-6 team. I feel like they have the ability to punch with the teams like Davenport and Saginaw and stuff like that. At the same time, their defense hasn't been good enough to win games, and well, they're not scoring enough either. But Davenport at home, I think they are starting to kind of get a little something going here. I like them to win this game, but I think this game's competitive. Well, how do you see it?
Well, I do too, and in part because I just don't. We just haven't seen, for as much as Davenport's won 4 games already, they haven't blown anybody out.
Right.
Even in games where we felt like, you look at somebody that they're playing, you think, all right, man, they got to be a couple of touchdowns better than these guys, and it just doesn't seem to pan out that way, right? The game ends up staying close, or Davenport will build a 2 or maybe even a 3-score lead halftime, early third quarter, and then they kind of have to cling to it and and defense has to make some plays at the end to try and seal things up. So I'd like to think that in this one, with them being at home and not having to deal with any of that second half letdown that sometimes you see out of clubs when they have to make long trips, I think that'll help them. But I'm with you in this one in that I think Wayne's going to be physically capable, at least up front, defensively, to kind of give Davenport some fits here or there. I mean, let's face it. How often do you see 4-2 teams where they're only outscoring opponents by a point? They're only out rushing them by a yard.
Right.
That to me is going to be the key in this game. Does Wayne's defensive front, do guys like Carl Ware, do they step up and have big games, or do the Myron Harrises and the Kendall Williams and the Preston Smiths end up with big games? And do they get some more run out of the quarterback? Do O'Horo and Mathis actually have good games running the ball? From behind center.
Yeah, it's almost like Davenport's playing a style where we're going to play good defense. We're not going to risk things too much offensively. Mm-hmm. And some of that's led to some close games. But, as we go through, this is definitely kind of the main one on the card here for us. And, I tell you right now, the more I dug into the Saginaw Valley defense, before our interview tonight with Coach, seeing how frequently they're getting to the quarterback. Right now, they're tied for sacks right now with some other team that's right across the page from them. Mm-hmm. So, and we always look at that team as somebody who gets to the quarterback. And, Saginaw's played a decent schedule coming into this.
For sure.
So, when we take a look at the tape here, the numbers aren't wildly different. Now, rushing offense, despite the fact Saginaw's in the top 30 in rushing offense, Grand Valley's 303 jumps off the page. I mean, they are the top rushing offense in the country that isn't running the option.
Right.
I'm dead serious. And they're third overall. Fourth is Carson Newman. Guess what? Carson Newman runs the option. So now, so if we go ahead and we look at that, you go, wow, they're really running the ball well. But, with the quarterback, running back attack in terms of being able to run, that's not a surprise to us necessarily. And then when you flip on the other side, the defense, The yards per game is quite a bit different here. In terms of how Grand Valley's been able to hold, teams off. They're just getting off the field faster, if we're going to be really honest.
Yeah.
So when I look at this contest here, I look at Saginaw Valley, some of the athletes they have, are they going to be able to run as freely and whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a receiver, as they have been? I don't think it's going to quite be that way with Grand Valley's defense. How do you see this one here? Do you think that this is a lower scoring game, Tony? Or and is there a chance that this is maybe as good as any opponent that they've seen this year, Grand Valley?
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that this is probably going to be the best team that the other has seen all year. I guess I could make a case that by the time we get to the end of the year, we might think Pueblo isn't such a bad opponent.
But we're kind of getting there differently. They're such different teams.
Correct. But still pretty good and physical up front defensively. But yet, even though they kind of stalled out in the second half, Grand Valley early in that game ran the ball extremely effectively. And so I think that's going to be, one of the key things here is Grand Valley able to establish the ground game the way that they want to early? If Saginaw is able to stifle that and try and make Avery Moore have to throw the ball more than he has thus far this year, that's going to play to Saginaw's advantage. Now, there have been a couple of games where Moore's thrown it a decent amount, and he's done okay with it. But, I mean, if you're going to take the run away from Grand Valley, I probably have a few more question marks about that than I do if you take the run away from Saginaw Valley and what we've seen from Mason McKenzie in the Saginaw passing game. So then it just becomes a pass protection thing, and Coach Brady touched on this, a tackling thing, and that there's one thing that both of these teams do extremely well is tackle in space. And that's what great defenses have to do. And when you're dealing with the kind of athletes that both of these clubs have, you're going to have to do it. So I think to me, that's the thing. And you're right. The only stat that really jumps off the page is that rushing game for Grand Valley. And if they're able to do anything in that 250 and above, like they did against Davenport, they're going to control the pace of play. They're going to get what they want in terms of situations, in terms of field position, and what they want for their defense, and it's going to be to their advantage. If Saginaw can take that run game away in any real way, especially during the first half, then this game becomes a really interesting one as it progresses. I think it's going to be a great game anyway. I'm going to be there Saturday. I can't wait. This is going to be a ton of fun.
I think given some of the personnel that Saginaw has defensively, they've got some of the best defensive personnel in the country. And when I look at that, if Grand Valley is able to establish the run on them, that's going to say a whole heck of a lot about the Grand Valley offensive line.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you take a look at that front seven that Saginaw's got, that club is really good up front there. So that's kind of what the matchup I'm looking for in this one. Is there a chance that Saginaw Valley's, got an upset alert here? If they can keep this game to where it's lower scoring, I'm going to say under 24 or so, then I think it's advantage Saginaw Valley. If this game gets going, I don't like Saginaw Valley in that kind of game against Grand Valley. I just think that Grand Valley offensively has too many weapons. So I'm taking Grand Valley here. I'm assuming you are as well. But at the same time, I mean, if I look at and see this game's 10-10 at half, I wouldn't be real surprised either.
I wouldn't either. And my lean is Grand Valley just from the standpoint that Saginaw has been close a couple of times over the last 3-4 seasons and just hasn't been able to get over the hump. And sometimes you almost have to say, you got to show me. But this might be the best prepared to show somebody that Saginaw has been. Maybe since Coach Brady's been there. I mean, this team is really rolling right now, and you could tell just by the way he talked about his team how much confidence that the kids have and he has in them. And this is the best test that again both of these teams will have seen so far this year. And we talked a little bit about this pre-show. Just
right.
Saginaw, the only thing that they can't do is kind of get ahead of themselves because if you look at their last 5 weeks, they don't have they don't have any gimmies left. I mean, they
Right.
got the top 5 other teams in the GLIAC are what they have left. So, and so it's this is the beginning of the gauntlet for them, and boy, it'd be a great way for them to kick it off. I do still lean Grand Valley in this one again, just because if they can get that run game going, which they've shown so far, that against just about anybody that they can, then yeah, it certainly favors them. But yeah, I'm with you. The longer it stays tight at home with the crowd and everything else, Saginaw could definitely start to feel it, and they've got enough playmakers to be able to take this one.
I think for Saginaw, the X factors are their front 7. It needs to not only keep the run from not bowling them over in that game,
Yep,
but also hit the quarterback and disrupt Grand Valley that way. But I think Mason McKenzie's the X factor. If Grand Valley's going to come after him.
yep.
And if he escapes the rush and gets loose all of a sudden, look out. I mean, that could become a 40-yard gain out of nowhere. And I think his ability to make plays and run the way he can is quite an X factor here. I'll be interested to see how Grand Valley attacks him there, because if they bring the blitz like they like to, boy, I tell you, if he gets loose out of that, look out.
Yeah.
Because not gonna be a lot of defenders back there to get him at that point.
No,
So,
and that's one of the things that Grand Valley does have a tendency to be more proficient with than they used to be, is how to deal with quarterbacks who are that mobile, and how do they make sure that they're prepared schematically for those instances when a quarterback like that is either going to run by design or when their tendency is going to be to leave the pocket.
yeah.
And the Cardinals have to do the same thing with Grand Valley, right? Because if Avery Moore gets loose, he causes a lot of problems. I think the difference is how well are these quarterbacks when it is a passing situation and the pocket's, kind of muddy. How well do they stay in the pocket, not kind of walk or move themselves into sacks, or maybe even try to keep plays alive that aren't warranted and maybe just chuck it and live for the next down. I think the quarterback that makes the fewest mistakes is going to give their team a real good chance. And, it was funny to hear Coach Brady kind of grade his team, right? He was talking about B-, C+. If you watch some of the press conferences from around the league, I try to catch every coach's pressers from every week. And that's actually one of the things that Coach Wooster's even said a couple of times, is the Lakers feel like they really haven't played much better than maybe, 65-ish%. And it's like, now you're starting to get into the time of the season where if you keep playing at 65%, these are the types of teams where that's going to get you beat. So that's part of why I'm so fired up about this game, because you've got two teams who really feel like they haven't played their best football yet, and they're playing somebody where you kind of need to play better than you have. And so which one's going to be able to take that next step forward more convincingly on Saturday?
Now that's a mid-afternoon start. Did I see that right? 3:00 local?
3:00. Yep.
Okay, fair enough. Middle of my afternoon. I'm actually, here's a wild one, Tony. Augustana in Sioux Falls here are about 9 minutes apart, stadium to stadium.
Yes.
I'm going to go to I've never done this before. I'm going to go to the first half at Augustana against Winona State. Winona State's got a freshman quarterback they've put in that they've been rolling with the last 2 weeks since they put him in. 6'5" guy, runs well, can throw. I'm going to go watch that for a half. Then I'm going to come on over and watch Duluth at Sioux Falls, who's now 5-2 against the 4-3 Duluth squad. So that's going to be my kind of weird double dip. I'm hoping to not miss any action, because in the midst of it, I should be able to drive over in time if I play my cards right.
So wait a minute, both games start at the same time, and so you're going to a first half and a second half?
What do you think about? See, I'm trying to do something different, because they're never in town the same day. The schedule makers for the Northern Sun didn't exactly do this really smart, because they have two teams from Sioux Falls, both at home at start time.
That's okay to have them at home on the same day, but yeah, start one at noon and the other one at 4 or 6 or something.
They're never thinking of me, Tony. It's never about the guy who covers the league. You know that.
Well, yeah, but I would think there'd be enough fans just in the metro area, enough as it is, that might want to try and do them both. That'd be killer.
I'm going to say my
play
GLIAC
it
guy
up.
told me. I'm going to say my GLIAC guy told me. Here's what we should do. I like that.
That's right. The Sioux Falls double dip, man. They can make like market the daylights out of it, man.
Exactly. All 12 fans who go to both like I do. But once again, we appreciate Coach Ryan Brady from Saginaw Valley coming on with us to discuss his team. Fans of the show, Tony and I have talked. We're going to go ahead and try and bring a coach on here and there as time allows. We'll just keep you guys guessing. We'll never know who's going to be on.
That's right.
But,
always a surprise.
Well, Tony, I appreciate you making time for us again this week. About to say, I will see you on Sunday evening. And, well, I guess the rest of the fans will too. So
let's hope so. I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Well, see you guys at the games. And thanks for tuning in.